Oh,
That's the wrong scene. That's a little scuff.
ooh, nice, nice. We're looking good.
Please hold.
We're reaching levels
Our
of speech that shouldn't even be possible.
There we
wow.
go.
There
Let's
we
go.
go.
We got there. We got
Nailed
there.
it.
Hello and welcome to another Leftist Audio episode. Apparently, you would think by like number 5 or whatever we're on at this point, I would have the stream set up like a little cleaner than that. But we're here. We're on the right scene now. Crazy. What a time to be alive. My name is Aaron, and I'm here with our constant co-hosts, Josh and Brent. Hello, wave to the people.
Hello.
Hope we're all doing good today. Today we've got 3 hot topics. We're going to be talking about week 2 of Biden's executive orders. We're going to be talking about some good old stonks. I'm sure you guys have all seen in pretty much everywhere. GameStop, AMC, the great Wall Street Bets push. And we will finally cover I honestly already forgot what our second topic, the reconciliation of the stimulus.
Yeah, stimulus reconciliation.
Because that still hasn't happened. Shocker. Thank you, Congress. So, all of that said, let's go ahead and start with the executive orders. I do want to break down, however, not necessarily everything is an executive order that gets kind of covered out. So there's executive orders, proclamations, and executive memorandums.
Okay.
Executive orders are pretty much, I'm not really going to define these because we understand what those are, but proclamations, these typically deal with the activities of private individuals, and they don't really have the force and effect of law unless the president is given the authority by the Constitution or something else, mainly kind of ceremonial in nature, but in the past, apparently these were a lot more heavy lifting. So heads up on that one. And then the final one, the executive memorandums, they are not even required to be printed in the Federal Register, and they don't even have. The president could put these out on anything, as they don't even require you to like cite the legal authority to use these. So it's more of a suggestion than anything. So that's kind of our breakdown. Executive orders will be the real ones that are going into effect, require the actual authority. Yeah, maybe that's a bad term, but they're the most powerful of the 3 if you want to be that granular. So that's pretty much where we're at with these.
Can Biden suggest more money into my bank account right now, please?
Do you mean like speculative suggestion, or do you mean just like actually just insert money into your bank account?
Just straight up insert money into my bank account right now. Like,
Well,
can you do that with a memorandum? Can you do that with
They have actually argued if he can issue stimulus checks via executive order. I know Trump had looked for an avenue to do that, but I think they came to the conclusion that he couldn't, like, he would have to have somewhere to pull the funds from, and I think the only other option was like FEMA or something like that.
If we can print $3 trillion for the stock market in a week, we can print $3 trillion for the American people in a week. All right, let's get it done.
Let's.
I didn't know this was House of Cards. We're really going down that one. But let's talk about these executive orders. So we already talked about the week 1 executive orders last time we were live. So this week we're going to cover week 2. So this will be January 25th forward. So that's what we're going to cover. The first of which he led with a repeal of the ban on transgender people serving openly in the U.S. military. I think we can all agree that's a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
More trans drone strikes. More trans drone strikes.
Oh, yeah.
More.
Can we bring the U.S. Army Twitch channel back? Or are we gonna hit that point?
No, but I mean, regardless, it was a clear counterculture, counter political correctness move when the Trump administration banned them. There was no legitimate reason to ban them. So I mean, I think this is just a part of the overarching like sweeping of the house, so to speak, of just like getting all of the trash that Trump did by executive order out. Is it a just like globally defining moment in history? No. But is it a good thing? Yeah. Yeah. So, that's how I'm going to feel about a lot of these.
Yes, you should not be able to discriminate based on sexual orientation. And Joe Biden, I think I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but he did also renew protections for discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender in the workplace. And so it's kind of just like, hey, the military also cannot discriminate based on that, as long and with every other company in America. So, and the military is the number one employer in the United States right now. That's kind of like a little known fact, is like literally the military employs more people in America than anyone else. So it is important that they are not able to discriminate based on gender, sexual orientation, anything. Though I will meme about it because, goodness gracious, identity politics can be a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It's important on the one hand, but on the other hand, wow, I really want a female SWAT officer to bust down my door. Like that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. Diversity and oppression. Hell yeah, my man.
So the next one is we tightened up the Buy American rules in government procurement. Basically just said whenever possible, the U.S. government and all that should buy from things produced in America. I'm all about that, so I don't think anyone will disagree with this.
Really. No, I mean, the only thing I hope from that with the whole Buy American line is buying from small businesses. I actually watched a segment with a guy who's been suing the federal government with all those FISA requests, the Freedom of Information Act, or what are those?
FOIA?
FOIA? Yeah, FOIA requests. Suing the federal government to prove that they have not been actually like living up to their end of the bargain of the Small Businesses Act and actually like providing enough capital towards small businesses through like government contracts and stuff like that. And it would be an easy way to actually stimulate the economy. So I hope with Buy American, there's also some emphasis on buying or actually living up to the government standard of buying from small businesses through government contracting.
Yeah, and it was mainly around loopholes that companies were using to get around it. So they would manufacture every single part of a product overseas, send it over to America, and then just have like a single person go boop and snap it together, and now it's all of a sudden built in America, even though 95% of the jobs were overseas. And so it was mainly focused around closing those loopholes. How effective that will be is yet to be seen, but we'll see.
Someone has to actually enforce it.
The sentiment is good, if nothing else.
Yeah.
The next one was a proclamation, also on the 25th, and the last of what we got on the 25th. And that was reinstating the coronavirus travel restrictions on Brazil and most of Europe, which I'm surprised we haven't seen more of right-wing Twitter kind of memeing that after all the controversy over the previous travel bans. So just kind of funny, and I do have to give credit where it's due. Trump did get like the China travel ban and everything in place, but it's funny. Everyone thought it was racist, and then once everyone agreed, it's like, oh, you didn't do it soon enough. I don't like to give too much credence to that Twitter crowd, but they at least had a fair point there. and the
I don't think so.
two-facism.
So Trump used a lot of the whole like, why you're just calling my actions racist, when literally the basis of a lot of his executive orders was just straight up racism and an attempt to harness xenophobia
You're not
to
wrong, but I
get
think you're
away
derailing
with things.
from.
So I don't think anyone was like seriously calling things like a travel ban racist. The issue was his travel ban didn't restrict US citizens that were in China. It was just some Chinese people from coming over, and it was kind of it was like it was like, oh, let's make an executive order to make sure people can't go to Chinatown, New York. You know, it's kind of like it's not effective, and literally all the executive order was doing with Trump's Chinese travel ban was saying, "Hey, Chinese people, you're infected, gross." Like it was entirely based on racism. So, and it was an attempt around like all of his messaging was an attempt around, hey, this whole virus thing, it's not my fault, it's China's fault. Um, and that was his attempt to get out of what was going on. But you know, when China's opening water parks as America can't even open a single business without a percentage of its workers dying, it's kind of a little bit hard to say.
True. I think that the coronavirus travel restrictions on Brazil and Europe are important just because we're seeing so many more mutated strains coming out of those countries. Um, there's now like I believe there's an English strain and a Brazilian strain of COVID now.
South
And
African as well.
basically by all that means is that the mutation was like first discovered there. But they are starting to see it be even more contagious than what we had here in the States. And I believe the first case of the Brazilian COVID strain actually did appear in the US last week. So, I mean, if that broke out as along or as alongside the strain that we already have, I mean, our COVID numbers are already terrible, like really bad. We're at like 4,000 plus a day, people dying. I mean, it could get a lot worse before it gets a lot better because the Biden administration has also said that we're starting from like square one, square two on vaccine distribution. So it's not going to get better for a while. Like we're looking at the fall, like winter, before we start seeing COVID numbers actually improve. So I think measures like these to try to reduce impact, it's important.
Yeah, I fully agree. Interesting note again, though, not an executive order or proclamation. I'd like to see if Trump used an executive order or a proclamation as well. I kind of have no doubt that he has the power to do so, obviously, but curious if they both went the same route mechanically to get that in place.
It makes you look good, like, you know, to your base, if that's obviously if that's what your base wants, but it makes you look like you alone are doing something instead of, I mean, Congress is so hamstrung at this point, as we're going to talk about in the next segment, that I mean, at this point, really all governance at this point is just done via the president. What little power or what power Congress allows them to have via executive order. Everything else is gridlocked, hamstrung, except for the defense budget and the yearly government budget. Those are the only two things that pass every year. Everything else, nope. So,
Yeah, but whatever, we can leave that. The next one
yeah.
is a big one, a big win in my book. It's gonna end. So we're gonna end the Justice Department's use of private prisons and not renew the contracts when they come up. The actual language of the executive order was kind of nice, calling out the fact that essentially these are not focused on rehabilitation and reintegration of the people back into society. So I like to see that we're going to move away from all of these private prisons and making a profit off incarcerating people. it'll still take time.
Yeah,
It's not like he immediately said no, but with anything like that, you have to then plan an alternative because we have so many people incarcerated in this country.
yeah.
You can't just flip the switch one day and say, "Here you go, public, state-run prisons, everything. Just take this." So there's a lot of work to still be done and a lot of justice reform, in my personal opinion. But I really like this order, and I think it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a step in the right direction. I don't think that this is another, again, like a history defining moment. Most incarcerated people in the US are incarcerated in state prisons. So there is obviously only so much that Joe Biden himself can actually do to affect the incarcerated population of the US, just because so many of it is exclusively held within the state. There is more that could be done, but I do think this is a step in the right direction. I'd like to see the federal government as a whole move away from private prisons, like everything. Um, but the real issue here, the meat and potatoes of the incarcerated population of the U.S., is with states. So there is really only so much he can actually do to affect it.
So the we I forgot that we had this discussion in chat and we didn't have as much discussion on stream. But me
Yeah.
and Josh actually had a pretty lengthy we'll call it a discussion over this executive order. And it is because he's accusing me of being just a black pill Andy essentially with
No,
every executive order. But
I wanted to come in
what I
here a little
said
more level, you know.
what I was saying was essentially I thought it was pretty bullshit. That executive order in that if you are against private prisons, be against private prisons. He ended private prisons under the DOJ's purview. He did not end private prisons under the Department of Homeland Security, which encompasses ICE, which encompasses all of the immigration private prisons. He didn't do anything to that. He essentially reinstated an Obama era policy that said 4 years ago that said, yeah, the DOJ will not make any private prisons. So because that was a regulation 4 years ago, you had a prison population of you have like a federal prison population of a couple million, I think, and this impacted 14,000 of them. So it was essentially nothing in my view. It was a symbolic to say, yeah, I know you lefties hate private prisons. Well, guess what? I'm gonna make private prisons illegal. Please don't check. Please don't actually look into it. And it's because when you actually look into it, oh, it turns out most of the private prison population under the purview of the federal government is in immigration, is in ICE. And they're still doing that right now. There are immigrants in private prisons right now. And
For the guy that passed the crime bill, like whatever, dog. Like I'm just happy it's a step in the right direction, if anything. So,
but it's not. It worries me when we say something's a step in the right direction when it's not anything. Like it worries me when we give credit for something that
whoa,
really,
you're really gonna say it's not a step in the right direction? Period. I get
I don't
it's
think
not
so.
the biggest fix.
I don't think so
something.
because I think it's just going to be okay, cool. This one specific instance of private prisons is gone, so that I can say that I banned private prisons. Meanwhile, I didn't really ban private prisons, and those prisoners will just go to some state's private prison, and I can still keep all of my immigrants in private prisons. It's something to be like, hey, I have to appease this base somehow. Don't worry, board of private prison companies who I actually worry about. I have to appease this crowd somehow. So this is how I'm going to do it, through purely symbolic measures. If you want to attack, if you say something is wrong, if you say something is bad, if you are fundamentally against the idea, right? You should be doing everything under your purview to change it. But Biden has said nothing about these private prison for ICE. He said nothing about it. Like, that's it. He essentially signed an executive order that Obama signed, which, oh man, if in 4 years Biden or whoever's running gets beat out, guess what? It'll just get undone again. So cool. We just had 4 years
that's
without
fine.
it.
Now
You
they
have to,
can't.
you have
Now
to
they can't
fundamentally
re-sign
attack
the
it.
current
And I agree,
contracts.
it should be fundamentally attacked through legislation, and through Congress, right? But you're going to need the bully
Here's the
pulpit.
problem, though.
Also,
Yeah, you're
I
gonna
pulled up
need
some
the bully
stats,
pulpit
and I think
saying-
you're a little
Yeah.
bit off on the ICE count. The ICE count is up to 42,000 with data as of 2020 from the Prison Policy Initiative. I think you're a little off.
It's also the
on
Department of Homeland
numbers.
Security. So like ICE is just
Okay,
one
so
segment
perhaps
of-
it's not included.
So,
yet then.
do
Fair
any of
enough.
the see, and I don't really know, but are we looking at any of the illegal immigrant population from that are caught like at the border, that kind of thing? Do any of them end up in state prisons, or is this all ICE and DHS detention centers?
So from my understanding, ICE will contract out different detention centers that are private prisons,
Okay,
for the most part, and just
so they are
float-
under the purview of ICE, though. Like, it wouldn't be a state prisons issue.
No, it would almost certainly not be a state prison issue. It would illegal immigrants are under the federal government.
Okay,
Because
I was just
and that's
curious
and that's
because-
it's interesting. It's interesting because the jurisdiction where this gets back to sanctuary cities. So let's say an Atlanta police officer arrests an illegal immigrant. Do they have the obligation to then turn that immigrant over to ICE? That's what we're talking about when it comes to sanctuary cities. Is if you know you have an illegal immigrant, do you have to turn that person over to the federal government? And a quote unquote sanctuary city is a city in which that does not happen, in which illegal immigrants are, once they have served their fine, or they serve a fine, or they get out of jail because they made bail or whatever, they do not have to be turned over to the federal government.
Also, after some more digging, so private prisons are actually a pretty small piece of the pie, about 10%, which, don't get me wrong, that is still a lot of people given incarceration rates in the U.S., but fair point that looking at that in the total context, it does not address the... But I still think it's a pretty good step forward. If nothing else, we see something out of it from, again, the crime bill guy, right?
Yeah, and I will say one quick word before we move on to stimulus. Biden, we're actually seeing the first effect of Trump placing these Federalist Society shithead judges that are pure just partisan hacks coming in and filling a ton of these seats. Biden put out an executive order that said there is going to be a 100-day memorandum on deportations. So essentially, hey, ICE, DHS, please stop deporting people for just 100 days. Just stop doing it. And ICE told Biden to fuck off and is continuing to deport people. They deported a person who survived the El Paso shooting, where a white supremacist walked into a Walmart and started shooting every brown person they could find.
Can we talk about the way they treated members of Congress that went and inspected those facilities? This is old news, but Jesus Christ!
I mean,
we gotta
I'm
do
just saying,
something about this.
Yeah, but yeah, ICE is an
Sorry to
entirely
derail
rogue
you,
agency. ICE is an entirely rogue agency, and so they continue to deport people. And then a Trump judge said that they are allowed to, essentially, that they said Biden, even though Biden has a all-encompassing what's it called? Prerogative or the power, authority.
Yeah.
Has the authority to stop immigration or to continue immigration enforcement. That is what the Supreme Court said about Trump. It's why Trump was able to institute the Muslim ban. This Trump judge was just like, yep, yeah, ICE, you can continue doing what you're doing. And so, whether we'll actually see a true 100-day memorandum on deportations, who knows? I don't know. All I know is fuck ICE and abolish it already. It's a rogue agency. It needs to die as an agency. It needs to be broken up, all of the members fired, and have a pure top to bottom audit, investigation, and arresting of anyone that's found to have broken human rights violations. Like it is a Gestapo of the 21st century at this point. I mean, you have doctors performing forced hysterectomies on people. You have torture going on in these facilities. You have people starving. You have coronavirus running rampant because they're laughing at them. You just have a pure top to bottom human rights crisis going on at our border right now that was being ignored and exacerbated because of Trump and is now just being ignored. Um, I cannot describe how bad it is, and so when every right wing bullshit person comes in and starts yelling about how the Chinese are treating Uyghur Muslims, which is awful, by the way, and a genocide, I'm like, hey, we have our own human rights violations going on right now in our border that we need to take care of. And because that's literally what China points to.
Yeah, we're
when
the
we start
fucking
calling them out.
United States of America. What are we doing? It's
Yeah, no, I agree.
disgusting.
I mean, this is historical, though. I mean, when we first started enforcing immigration laws in this way, when it started, when Mexican immigrants started becoming this boogeyman. This is what we did. If you can look it up, America had the first concentration camps. Um, we we were spraying people down with insecticide whenever they came into the border to go to work. It used to be you could just walk across the border, you hand them your papers, they go, yep, and you go. Then we started stripping people, and then we started shaving them, and then we started doing all these horrible things. Vox has a very good documentary on this. I'll drop it in. It's a very short documentary, but um, it's really really eye-opening to talk about how, yeah, and literally the Nazis used some of those ideas for those camps in their design of concentration camps. Like we America has a harsh history of, like giving, is it's called the dark history of gasoline baths at the border. We would pour people gasoline on immigrants. It's mind-boggling to know the history of America, and it's deeply saddening. But hopefully, we can get better. I just don't know.
All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and speed round through the rest of these executive orders, just for the sake of time. So beyond that, we have we're pausing new oil and gas leasing on U.S. lands and waters, elevating climate change as national security, and yeah, and a foreign policy priority. Hard agree. Hell yeah!
And they also repealed.
The
They repealed the Muslim travel ban as well, also POG. So, yeah. And like I said earlier, these were not like earth-shattering movements in American policy, but I think they all were just trying to clean up some of the crap that we got over the last 4 years. So, not too shabby.
The next one makes me happy. Reestablish the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology.
Thank God.
Big fan of that one. I'm glad we have a president that actually listens to science, so that's good. We'll have to see if he does anything with that, but I like knowing it's at least there. And then the most recent one on the 28th. There are some TBD ones, but we'll see on that. Is the reopening of Obamacare marketplaces in lowering recent barriers that were added to joining Medicaid.
Also POG.
So, also good. I know. Where's my single payer? So I'm not even gonna address that argument here.
No, that's another issue for another day.
At least we're seeing some stuff happen and we're continuing to move. So I like it. So that pretty much catches everyone up on the executive orders. I skipped a lot of the memorandums kind of between those, but if you're curious, you can look it up. There's timelines everywhere as the Biden presidency is under scrutiny from the media and really everyone as we look to see where this administration is going. So
yeah, there's 42
topic,
of these,
though,
and I would like to say fuck the New York Times for saying, oh no, Biden is passing so many executive orders, when literally like 75% of them are just undoing shit Trump did.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh man, is executive orders getting... Well, yeah, because Trump passed a load of them. And as our legislator dies, we're going to rely on executive orders more and more. So maybe fuck off, New York Times.
Let's talk about the legislature being completely dead. Let's get into that.
One last note, a fun count on executive orders. Top, unsurprisingly, FDR at 3,728. With the next closest being Woodrow Wilson at 1803, and then Calvin Coolidge bringing up third at 1203.
Wow.
Yeah, but FDR I digress.
Some changes
with some of the most popular policies. Shocker. But let's talk stimulus while we're talking popular policies.
And hamstrung government.
Why don't one of y'all take this one? I know y'all are pretty passionate on the stimulus and now the reconciliation that's looking like it's going to take place to pass it.
I mean, I'm pretty heated that with Biden, at least, that he's still trying for this compromise bullshit, especially after what came out today. There was an article from, let me see if I can find it here.
He's not really. Essentially, I of all the things that I expected you to criticize them for, that's not one. They feigned it. They said, yeah, we'll unify if they're willing to sign on to our package. Like, hey, yeah, we have this $1.9 trillion package. We feel like it is the minimum amount necessary to jumpstart our economy and get us back on track. And then when Republicans said, no, we actually want to compromise, they said, all right, fuck you, we'll do it through budget reconciliation and we won't drop our priorities, And now they're trying to just, right now, what is going on is they are working a way to get it through the process of budget reconciliation. And that is very wonky. They have to make sure that it doesn't cost a certain amount of money to get it through this process. And all of this is because if it does cost a certain amount of money, they have to go through the normal voting process, which is subject to the filibuster. And the filibuster means that essentially you can talk for forever on a debate of a bill and never have it pass unless there is a call for cloture, I believe. And that means that requires 60 votes. And so essentially any bill to get it to the point at which it can pass requires 60 votes. This was a Jim Crow era discovery of the rules. And so essentially the counter to the 60 vote thing without blowing up the filibuster, because Democrats are pussies, has been budget reconciliation. That is what Republicans actually used as well to pass their tax cuts, is saying like you squeeze it in under a certain amount of money and in a certain purview, and say, yep, this meets all the rules of needing 51 votes, 50 plus the vice president, rather than needing 60 votes to get through cloture.
Yeah, my biggest issue is that, he'd been saying, oh, let's come together, we can work together on this. And look at the counteroffer that the Republicans gave the Democrats. 10 GOP senators came forward today and presented Biden with a $600 billion stimulus package. That is such a joke that you would take like a tiny portion of the GOP, the rest of the GOP essentially voting for literally nothing by opposing this. And they say, hey, we know that there's only 10 of us, but we'll be the 10 that gets you to 60 votes if you compromise 75% of your position. And it's like, what? Are you kidding me? It's absurd. I really hope they push super hard for reconciliation. I can't believe that they actually thought it was going to work out. The same thing happened in '08 when the economy tanked. You know, they told Democrats like, "Oh, you know, in order to get us on board, you're going to have to really compromise a lot of those things that you wanted." You know how many Republicans voted for that stimulus package in '08? 3. 3 senators, 3 Senate Republicans voted for that. It, all of that compromise for nothing. And I think, unfortunately, we are going to see some amount of compromise for nothing in return. And how much we see is to be determined. I know it's being written through the House right now. Um, and, you know, and all the procedures it takes to get it through via reconciliation, like you were talking about. Um, but when it hits the Senate, I mean, I think the lines are drawn, with the exception of maybe Manchin. I mean, he would really be, he's the linchpin of all of this.
I'm okay with the compromise, but I I don't. I want them to hardline on this. This is a popular piece of fucking legislation.
Yeah, he's a lib, of course.
So, all right, chill, buddy. But the point is, I want to see some Republicans sign off on this, but I don't want to compromise it. So if we got to go reconciliation to hardline it, so be it. This should be so. It should be so easy for them to agree on and push forward. It's absolutely disgusting.
And honestly, it essentially has been. And that's kind of been my most positive thing coming out of the Biden administration, is essentially Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden have been one to one in the negotiating process at the very least. Now Bernie Sanders wants $2,000 checks, and Joe Biden's going to push.
That's what they said we would be getting. That's what we should
Joe Biden's
going
to push $1,400 checks, which I don't like. I'm not as annoyed with as some other leftists are.
It's better than nothing.
You deserve, and everyone in this chat, as long as you're not a millionaire, deserves $2,000 full monthly
$2,000.
Yes. Like I'm in full agreement with that, but I don't think it's as broken a promise as people say it is. I do think that their messaging was specifically around with this one-time check, and they were like, "Hey," Republicans were saying it needs to be $600. Democrats are saying it needs to be $2,000. Republicans sent out the $600 check, and they're like, that one needed to be $2,000, and so we are going to update it to be that. I think people understand that, and I get very annoyed with the criticism of they didn't follow through with a promise, because I don't think they were promising more than that. I get very annoyed with the I think the criticism should be the fact that Biden needs to put more into the American people's bank accounts to get through this. Like, that needs to be the criticism rather than a broken promise. I get that it's not the simplest one to do, but I think it's the better one from a moral standpoint. And if you can't be honest when making your criticisms, I don't think they're that good of criticisms. I just get annoyed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I want to see more direct stimulus to the American people, especially than we're seeing already. But I think any amount is good, because people need this money. People are desperate for this money. So I'm not going to reject the 1,400. You know, I'm not going to be like, how dare you? You know, you said it'd be $2,000. But I think, honestly, I think it's probably as good as we're going to get, with people like Feinstein and Manchin and people like that, in the way of actual like monthly payments or larger payment amounts or more stimulus. I genuinely believe this will be the last stimulus package. I don't think that those dinos will end up actually voting for another stimulus package. And I mean, like, Democrat in name only, not like because they're all old. But I think all of them will end up bailing on a stimulus package. The Republicans aren't even going to be on board for this one. Are we really going to pass 2 stimulus packages via reconciliation? I doubt it. So I really think this is it. So that's why I think it's important that Biden pushes for actual 2K checks, and I think it's important that Bernie is there trying to nudge him along, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you for clarifying, by the way. I thought you were just memeing Congress for being fucking ancient.
no, I think all dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Except for
no, I gotcha. But I agree. I think this is going to be the last stimulus. I unless vaccine distribution goes poorly, in which case I could see
Which
potentially
it
one
is
more.
at the moment, which I don't think we can blame on Biden too much, but yeah, it literally is going poorly.
There's also just
I will
random
say you'll not
issues
catch
out
me
of their
blaming Biden for
control.
that yet.
Yeah.
But I genuinely believe they're starting from maybe square one or two at best. There was little to no plan left in place for them. So yeah, I will not be criticizing them on that until post stimulus package.
Yeah, and I think that's some of the better
reading-
things in the stimulus package are the support for states. So states cannot run a deficit in the same way the federal government does because the federal government prints its own money and borrows from itself. And so that fiscal policy is just entirely different than state fiscal policy.
In some states, like Georgia, where we reside, they can't even run a deficit. But I was gonna say they had I was reading about a cooler that malfunctioned, and so they had to rapidly just vaccinate as many people as they could. I forget where this occurred, but it's interesting. I don't know. I hope that more than anything, we just get good vaccine distribution so we can get on with our lives and get everything truly back up and running.
Yeah. All right, you guys want to talk about?
I really do hope that we're able to come out of this with a new view on our economy. Speaking of a new view on our economy, we'll get into the GameStop stuff in a second, where we can see that the stock market itself does not really represent what is going on the ground with the American people. And the unemployment number even really doesn't represent what's going on in the American people. It's like as food insecurity has risen, as unemployment has risen, as more and more wages have kind of stagnated, the stock market is just going up. The money line just keeps going up. And it really just does show how our K-shaped recovery. And so if you don't know what K-shaped recovery means, essentially the recovery is split between the upper class and the lower class, where the upper class recovered immediately and the lower class still hasn't. All that the stock market and a lot of these jobs numbers represent is how well the upper class is doing. And so hopefully the Democrats, because the Republicans know this and don't care, hopefully the Democrats can understand that their loyalty and their votes come from that lower class. And to win elections, you're going to have to serve it better. And you're going to have to serve all of us better because that's the people voting for you.
All right, well let's get into the stock market, fellas. Aaron, do you know the whole situation behind GameStop? Can you explain very briefly how we are at where we're at?
Yeah, and I'll start by saying none of this is financial advice. Do not misconstrue it. Please reach out to an actual certified financial advisor if you want to invest or make any movements here. But essentially, GameStop is the one I'll dial in on because it's the most highly visible out of the stocks, I would say. But essentially, a bunch of hedge funds had over-shorted this stock, and that just means that they were planning for the price to go down. Some people on the subreddit Wall Street Bets realize that essentially that they were over-leveraging themselves in these shorts. And so they started putting out posts and memes and stuff. Funny subreddit, if you've never been there, I would recommend at least checking it out. But they then started telling people to buy it. It led to a huge run-up from retail investors, something that hedge funds were not prepared for. and so the price starts inflating as we have insane amount of market volume shooting up, with people just buying and then not selling. And then a lot of those contracts, the option contracts, were forced to execute as their expiration dates were coming up, leading to huge losses for the hedge funds and the people that bought in, just making a lot of money from the artificial demand increase. So it's made a lot of people millionaires overnight, and it's made a lot of traditional institutional investors very unhappy. We're actually seeing in real time them having to rethink all their formulas, because to their models and everything, it probably looks great. But now going forward, the ETFs and pretty much all of these big institutional investors are now going to have to keep a pulse on retail investors and kind of factor that into their equations. I've seen some pretty interesting stuff where some companies are admitting internally, anyways, I won't name names, that they agree with the sentiment that the retail investors are in the right, which I truly believe they are. My personal point of view on this: if a hedge fund can go out there holding these insane amount of shares and like lower credit ratings on stocks and lower ratings overall, you see that market news, it automatically starts lowering the valuation of that company. If that's not market manipulation, I don't know what is. So it's about time retail investors can get in on that.
So
That's my 2
I think
cents.
so if I can go off on a little, I think there's kind of a few different, there's like two different ways you can view this, and there's two different sides of the way people are viewing this. So essentially you have Wall Street bets, retail, and leftists and right like laissez-faire economists saying this is a game. This is, stocks have been detached almost wholly, but maybe not wholly, but pretty much wholly from a company's value. It's essentially, especially in the short term, just a feelings line that we can play with as much as we want. And so you've had the left wing saying this for years, and the right wing using this for years, essentially. Uh, and so they've been manipulating the market and playing around with it. These hedge funds have, while telling retail, like, oh no, but actually, all of our investment is based on fundamentals. All of our investment. And the only ones that bought in and ate that up was the media, was the CNBC investors, was the people who are committed to telling retail what they should be investing in. The only people who were saying everything is based on fundamental principles were retail, and government was governing and creating regulations as if all of these things weren't detached, while hedge fund was playing with the knowledge that it wasn't
Please,
attached.
can I just add a little caveat? For
Sure.
those of y'all that don't, maybe aren't as well read on sort of the financial system, do understand that hedge funds are notoriously more risky than like other institutional investors. They don't represent the same strategy as something like, your 401k manager, like a Vanguard of the world or something like that. Just throwing that little caveat out there. But yeah,
The
continue.
issue there is that they kind of are getting there, and they were, like, they were that risky, and that's what caused 2008, is because you had horrible, horrible, horrible loans and like horrible positions that were just entirely detached from reality going into these 401ks, these vanguards, and being bought by them, even though everyone understood that they were horrible positions. Now, those were related to the housing market and the bubble of the housing market. But essentially, imagine that there was market manipulation going on.
Well, I mean, I agree,
Only,
but they
I
still
mean,
have to
like I'm
go
just saying,
ahead.
like, imagine there was a situation like what's going on with GameStop right now, just with a separate market, and only really the hedge funds understood what was going on, and there was that same market manipulation going on, except all of the hedge funds bought a shitload of GameStop and then said, "Hey, GameStop's a great company. It's a fundamental company. It will never crash. we're going to rate all of these super good. And then the government came in and was like, yeah, those look great. Those look
And
super
bought
safe.
them.
That looks like a super good investment. And so then all of the vanguards of the world started buying it up. And we're like, yeah, now we have a super safe investment. And then the bubble blows because it's not real. That's what happened with the housing market.
Okay, so I hear you, but they have to invest in something, right? Like they hold so much capital. They do. I mean, believe it or not, money doesn't magically just increase sitting in your account. But we can all dream it does. Maybe buy some Bitcoin, but nevertheless, point is they have to invest in something, and so if that's what the market was reflecting, I get it. I don't know.
But
It's very.
They only have
interesting.
to invest in something because the government has entirely failed at its basic function. We only need retirement investment accounts because the government fucks old people right now. Like the government, like you can't live off of Social Security. You just can't.
I fully agree.
My grandparents are literally impoverished at the moment because they are living off Social Security. And they didn't have, and their retirement accounts just eventually ran out.
And then they borrowed against it too, which really disgusts me.
And so I don't think you should be forced to invest money to be like, yeah, I have to get a 401k. I have to be forced into this market to make sure I don't starve when I'm old. Like that's just so disgusting, and it's become such a normalized thing that I just I don't know. I don't think we should be forced to invest in any sort of way. I think you should right now. I do. I invest a lot of my money into an IRA on 401k right now. But I don't think that should be as normalized as it is today.
Yeah. No, that's fair, and I fully agree with that, but this is the world we're in, and so they have to invest in something.
Capitalist
I personally... wow. I don't know. The term kind of escaped me because it's been a few years since I've read about this. But have you seen how there's a number of nations that have started? It's kind of like a national investment fund to an extent, where their policy will pick out certain industries that they want to invest in. And that's what they'll dedicate their sort of Social Security-esque platform into investing with. I think that's a really interesting way to go about it, to where if we had better Social Security and, to your point, you could live off it and not have to do a private option as well. I think
that sounds a lot like privatizing Social Security, and that is not good. Do not privatize Social Security. Like, that's just bad. Just pay for it.
I'm just saying. Literally, I like the idea of a national fund to push forward important industries that we know need to.
Maybe what we should do. Maybe
it's use subsidies like a normal fucking government. Yeah, I guess.
Is a crazy idea is when people get paid, we should take a certain amount out of their paycheck, and the more that they make, we should take a little bit more out of their paycheck. We then put that into a fund that then pays people when they get older and can't work. I know this is a crazy idea. I know it's never been tried before.
Tax? Are you talking about a tax?
I don't like the T
in my America.
I think it's called just taxing and funding like a normal fucking government.
We don't use the T word here.
We don't need to rely on a private market to feed our people. Like, we don't need to rely on it.
To the government.
We don't need to rely on it, but if you're holding this next week, you're using it. You're helping squeeze the man just a little bit more. Because Melvin Capital, by the way, guys, I don't know if you know, lost 53% in January of like their total like capital, like revenue. I mean, that's absolutely insane. They are so close, well, halfway, I guess, to turning this hedge fund completely insolvent, which is
they're never gonna let that happen. Like, never gonna.
No, of course not. I mean, there were already plenty of short ladder attacks last week, completely tanking prices. Robinhood literally manipulating the market by not letting people buy, only letting people sell.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
by the
and it's Wall
time,
Street fighting back. Essentially, it is like it's so funny because you have the media yelling at everybody, and it's essentially retail saying, "Hey, guess what? Shit's rigged. We're rigging it." And hedge funds saying, "Yeah, shit's rigged. We're rigging it." And fighting with one another while the media is going, no, it's not rigged. I swear, guys, this is so bad. We need
yeah,
regulation." And it's
we're
like,
gonna crash the economy.
we should
Yeah,
have had
I love it.
regulation already. We should have had put things in place to make sure companies should be shorted this far. We should maybe ban shorts altogether. Like we need more controls on this, and we need the stock market to die as a idea and
That's a
as a
shit
thing.
take,
Honestly,
but I
we
don't
need
want
the
to
stock
cover
market
that
to go
today.
away in its entirety. But that's for a topic for another day.
Yeah, bad take alert, but that's okay. We'll let it go.
So actually,
okay,
that's probably
hold on,
something
hold
we'll
on,
come
hold
back
on.
to in
We're
the future for
coming up-
another debate.
We're coming up
We would
on
want
an
to see
hour.
like stock market abolition question mark.
And so, wow. Okay, that's not the term I would use. But so closing thoughts. Let's revisit executive orders. You got 30 seconds. What do you want his next executive order to target, or is there anything in the pipe really you're kind of hoping Biden pushes forward? Josh, we'll start with you.
I would like to see, like Brent said, I would like to see more movement on and against ICE and against those detention centers. I think right now the most important thing Biden can be doing is pushing for this stimulus package and pushing for vaccinations. So I guess just moving forward, really just trying to solve coronavirus first. I feel like we have to solve that before we can really tackle anything else. And we'll see how much he can get done with our hamstrung Congress.
All right,
As
sounds
someone
good.
pointed out in
Brent, 30
chat, the real
seconds.
issue we have right now is anime. We need to ban it entirely. Get it out. Anime out. No, but actually, I would
It's
like
making
to
the
see
frogs
some
gay.
movement on the student loan relief fund or front.
Amen.
It was a campaign promise. It's something under Biden's purview alone. Like he can do it. He knows he can do it for 10,000 right now. Do it. There's no reason you can't. You shouldn't do it now and immediately. So I would like to see him to come through on that promise.
Cool. And my last thing, I would like to just see an executive order. If it's not in the stimulus or the stimulus continues to be held up, I just want an executive order on vaccine distribution. I want some plans out there. I want government set up to go with. I think you should lean on the state governments. Typically, they're more connected with their communities, but I want the federal government to support them. So that's my number one, and then number two, selfishly, still the student loan relief as well. So those are the things I'm kind of hoping we'll see.
I don't even think it's like
so.
yeah, sure, it's selfish, but like, hey, that's also a crisis going on right now. I don't want it just for me. I want it for the millions of Americans that are struggling right now in our economy. Student loan debt's a part of it. A memorandum saying you don't have to make your automatic payments is not enough.
I hear you, but those are just my thoughts. And I guess other than that, keep your diamond hands solid. Remember, hold,
And
hold.
strong.
Hold, boys. Hold
But,
next week. BB to the moon, GME to the moon, AMC to the moon.
But yeah, thank you to everyone for tuning in. That's been our episode. Looking forward to see what other new developments we have next week to cover. Thank you if you're watching live on Twitch, interacting in chat. We appreciate it. Thank you to our audio listeners as well. So you can catch these anywhere you get podcasts. Just search up Leftist Audio. We are at Audio Leftist on Twitter, but Leftist Audio pretty much everywhere else. We're on YouTube, Twitch, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye. Love you, everybody.